It was pretty fun. We didn't have any money. Nowadays, though, if we were just making a weekly video game show, we could probably quite easily base the entire season in Vancouver. There are over a dozen world-class development studios in Vancouver right now. EAC, Radical, Rockstar, Relic, Next Level, United Front Games, Kerberos, Ubisoft, Propaganda, Yugo, 3Wave, Blue Castle, Hothead. The list actually does go on. And during that time that Vancouver was blowing up, BioWare was rocking things in Edmonton, showing the planet how to make RPGs that kick some serious ass. And Quebec was thundering into a gaming superpower of its own with the emergence of Ubisoft Montreal, and then later A2M and IDOS, among others. I actually remember when UB Montreal came to visit EP's offices in about 1999, and they brought us a Playmobil game. Things have changed a lot since then. Anyway, I've talked about the other cities across Canada that have made a difference in gaming for a reason, and there are definitely others that I haven't talked about, and I don't mean to forget about any other great Canadian studios, so please excuse me if I have. My point is, there is nothing stopping London or any other city in this country from becoming a powerhouse in the Canadian and global gaming marketplace. I've seen firsthand what passion and dedication brings to game studios all over this country, and for that matter, all over the world. Great games are made everywhere. I've been to tiny towns and way out of the way cities to visit game developers, and the common things that I see at these successful studios is a devout appreciation for the medium, a respect for the competition, and a willingness on the part of the entire team to make something that stands out. How else do you explain a small studio in a tiny college town like Uppsala, Sweden, making one of the best games of 2009, although nobody's buying it? It's Starbreeze's Chronicles of Riddick, Assault on Dark Athena. Or Ubisoft's studio in Montpellier, France, surprising the world with Rayman, again with King Kong, and more recently some crazy Rabbids. Or the Manchester, England-based developers TT Games, who have Legoized great properties like Indiana Jones, Batman, Star Wars, and as of today, Rock Band. In the smallish industrial city of Guildford, England, Lionhead cranks out great games like Black and White and the Fable franchise, while Media Molecule is just down the street from them trying to make this world a little big planet. In Espoo, Finland, Alan Wake is waking up in the same studio that made Max Payne. In Bend, Oregon, Sony developers make some of the best PSP games we've played with titles like Resistance Retribution and the Siphon Filter franchise. And probably the best little city that could story out there is Kyoto, Japan, which is the worldwide home of Nintendo. And I've been to pretty much all of these places, just as I've spent a lot of time traveling with EP to Quebec, Alberta, and all through the streets of Vancouver. Now I'm hoping that our cameras will be spending a lot more time in Ontario, and I'm thinking that you guys probably do too. So, what will help continue to put London on the map as a great game-making city? More great games. Certainly you have an excellent start here with incredibly talented studios like Digital Extremes or Big Blue Bubble, to name just a couple, and the various tax incentives that companies can get for starting here is great. Now I offer this. It's time as Ontarians and London-based game makers, if your desire is to stay in this city and build games, to dig your feet in, no pun intended, and to show the world what you and your local colleagues are capable of. One thing that any of us that have been involved in this industry for a while can see is that video games are attracting the brightest and most creative young people in media development today. If you're young, smart, talented, into art, music, movies, and games, and who isn't, there's a pretty good chance that you want to make video games. It's very cool. I mean, I see a lot more stylish people at game studios that I visit today than when I was starting out, let me tell you. Used to be dirty t-shirts and shorts everywhere. The challenge that I put to studios, schools, the local and provincial government, and to individual game makers is to now identify why you should put a flag in the ground and make your next great games here. I think it's more than just offering a financially attractive tax incentive. I think it's about celebrating the community, recognizing London's positioning in the gaming landscape and aspiring to grow it through meaningful ways. I think there's a tendency for the gaming industry to close itself off from the community and for studios to bury themselves in work. I think when you look at a studio like BioWare in Edmonton, which has a tremendous amount of outreach into the local community, you see the cultural pride that a city can take in its game makers. I think initiatives like Dig London are fantastic, but I also think it's incumbent on the game-making population base here to stay in this city if they want to make games and to help nurture the awareness for London on an international level. How do you draw more people to this city to make great games? You stay, and you make great games. My other main job is to host a TV show called Reviews on the Run, and in that job, I review hundreds of games for every platform imaginable every year. I don't know too many people that play as many games as I do. It's a very weird life. I spend many days in my game cave, traveling to exotic digital destinations. I don't think I'd want to trade it for anything, though. I love it. One thing I've definitely noticed is that pretty much since the runaway success of the iTunes platform as a game distribution vehicle and the relatively accessible development tools that are now available for the iPhone, the language of games has been distilled and claimed by interesting people everywhere. These developers, some with experience and some without, are fluent in the language of Mario, Grand Theft Auto, Tetris, and Final Fantasy, and they are reinventing, reinterpreting, twisting, morphing, stretching, and absolutely shaking up the ideas behind what makes a great game in 2009. The result is an explosion of interactive creativity on the App Store, and those thousands of games are added to the thousands of traditional pieces of game software that we've seen every year for the PC, consoles, and handhelds. Not to mention all those Flash-based products we've seen flourish on websites and social media hubs. Now, some might feel threatened or overwhelmed by the sheer amount of product available to consumers, and certainly this massive choice is impacting the traditional games business. But I argue that we're at the threshold of a revolution in this business that's similar to the shakeups the music business has felt, the broadcast industry has been going through since the introduction of cable, and now more recently the internet, and the theatrical movie business has been going through since the introduction of the VCR. Digital technology and distribution has made the barrier to entry for music, TV, movies, and now video games less expensive and way more accessible. This is at both the consumer level and also at the development stage. It's easier than ever to make something cool. It's also true that it might be harder than ever to make it a big hit. Some things that will help determine success are planning, prototyping, proper budgeting, and always a whole lot of passion. Quality work does find its audience. Now, audiences may be fractured as the choices continue to grow, but more and more people are also making video games as much a staple in their entertainment diet as movies, music, sports, books, and TV, which is great news for the growth of this industry. But with all those competing and exclusive platforms in the video game space, how does a game maker choose which direction to go? I've talked to independent developers, and an interesting strategy that I see being adopted more and more is to not determine an exclusive platform that you're building a game for, and rather plan for that game to be interpretable across many different devices. Maybe the right direction in 2010 and beyond is to choose which machines your game won't be compatible on and make something that works on all the others. That kind of choice is up to you, London developers. Just know that your talent base to build your games, which is today's digitally savvy game enthusiasts, knows a lot about this medium. Also know that there are a lot of robust game-making resources that are available off the shelf to help realize an idea. Some cost a lot, and some don't at all. Now, making core proprietary technology is definitely a vital part of the growth of this industry, and leading companies like Ubisoft will always be investing in that. But you as an independent can choose to focus on a creative concept using available technology and support. A lot of great games today are being built like this. Case in point, the exquisite Batman Arkham Asylum, made by Rocksteady Games in London, the other one, which utilizes the Unreal 3 engine. You see, there are a million different ways to make games, lots of different ways to distribute them, and a tremendous amount of choices that you'll have to make on the road to getting your title bought and played. I can tell you that regardless of the size of the game, the team behind it, or the game's eventual success or lack thereof, I always hear the same thing. Game makers would have loved some kind of combination of more time, more people, or more money to realize their idea. But what can aspiring London game developers do to help them stand out? I would say focus on original ideas. Yes, it's hard to come out and hit one for the fences when you're creating new IP and squaring off against established brands, but good original IP can get you noticed. Maybe a studio's choice is to take a contract to build a licensed property and then invest into something wholly original.